Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. So today is the day before the storm. The mighty Quinn is gonna run into us tomorrow. And I just wanted to take like 5 minutes to tell you about a few of the things you kind of run into and learn from the last storm. I guess it was known as Riley. Riley came through here and deposited all this snow. There was probably about a foot when it first came through, and it knocked down my power, and I was without power for about 60 hours. And if you look on the back porch there, amongst all the other stuff, you'll notice the Ryobi generator. That's good for a couple of 1,000 watts. It puts out, it's known as a generator inverter. It puts out really nice clean power. I put my kilowatt meter on it, and you turn on various things, and the frequency stays rock solid, the voltage stays rock solid. You know what I mean? Really a very good inverter. One small setback, well, two small setbacks. Setback number one is it only holds about 4 hours worth of gasoline, which is about a gallon, maybe a little over a gallon. It's efficient on fuel, but once again, if you're only getting 4 hours out of it, when you go to bed and you kind of want to leave the refrigerator and the pellet stove and all that stuff running, you have to wake up in the middle of the night and put gas in it, which leads to some of my other discussions, and we'll see those in a moment. The second problem with it, and I bought it over eBay. It was not a return. It was brand new in the box, but I'm thinking that it might have a manufacturing defect. It does not start easy unless you hit it with some starting fluid. It is not a good starting generator. Some generators, this Generac, most of the China ones, it seems that you throw a pull or two into them and they're running. That guy is fussy. It always seems to want a lot of starting fluid. And lastly, the other problem with it is there's a cover that you have to take off to check the oil. And to give it starting fluid, then you have to put it back on. The cover does not have captive screws, so if you undo the screw and drop it, it's gone. It doesn't hang on to the cover. You know what I mean? Some of them have retainers that keep you from losing them. It does not. So if you come home and it's dark out and it's time to fire up that little Ryobi, you have to have a screwdriver for taking the panel off so you can check the oil and so forth and on. You need a flashlight. By the way, the oil plug is also a pain in the neck to get in and out. You need a can of starting fluid. You need a funnel to put gas in it, unless you were smart enough to pre-fill it, knowing there's a storm coming tomorrow. So you fill it up with gas and check the oil and do all that, right, ahead of time. And if it says not to fill it while it's running, that's really the right way to do it, obviously. But for those of us with pellet stoves, if you shut down the pellet stove, especially if you're near the end of a clean cycle, you're trying to get that extra half a day or day out of it. If you shut it down, you really can't restart it unless you clean it first, which means you got to let it cool off, on and on and on. So you have a tendency to perhaps take a shortcut. Not that I'm recommending it. You should shut down the generator and let it cool off before you put fuel in it. About the fuel, about having one of these, if the gauge looks like this, you should probably take it and throw it away. That's a disposable. You should, make sure you have a functional fire extinguisher. What a horrible time to find out your fire extinguisher is done Especially if the gauge tells you in advance it's done, when you have a strong need for it, right? So that's the Ryobi. The Generac. This Generac is a wonderful generator. It puts out good power, not quite as clean as the inverter, but it does a pretty good job. The frequency holds, the voltage moves around a few volts as you load and unload it. The good thing about this is it's good for 220, and the other good thing about this is when you go to start something that's like a heavy load, a compressor or something like that, the 110 outlet really could put out that 20 amps. Wonderful, wonderful things. Bad thing about this generator, it's hard on gas. It's really hard on gas. Another bad thing, it's heavy. I can't like pick it up and carry it around and put it up on the back porch, which means when I use this, you see it's got nice wheels on it, I roll it out and I'm out here like in the snow. About running a generator in snow and rain and all that kind of stuff, first of all, it's not good for the generator, and secondly, it might not be good for you. You know, 110, 220 volts, ground, you know, your wife collects insurance when you're no longer with us. So, you know, you got to be aware of all of that. So you kind of need a nice, clean, dry area if you're going to run the generator. They also inhale quite a bit of air, so you really don't want it inhaling snow, right? Putting it in the generator or putting it in the engine. This stays on the cart, so it's up off the ground just a little bit. So if the ground is wet, I don't consider it too much of a problem. But if you don't have it up on a cart, or if there's snow here, once again, not good. If it's raining or snowing, obviously it'll get into it. So once the snow is over, I don't mind running this, but before the snow is over, I'm a little concerned about that. The inverter is not big enough to run my well. If the only thing I'm going to put on it is the furnace, it could run it. You know, typically what I'll do is I'll run the pellet stoves, the satellite dish, and the TV, the pellet stove. The pellet stove only uses 80 watts. So then what I'll do is when it's time to go to bed, I'll fill it up with gas, plug in the refrigerator or the freezer, and let it get nice and cold while I'm sleeping. It's quiet enough to sleep through the noise. This one is not quiet enough to sleep through unless you go on the, you know, far side of the house to one of the far bedrooms. This is noisy, a bit noisier too. Suggestions. If you're expecting a storm or want to be prepared for a storm, or however which way you want to deal with it, assuming you do not have a direct hookup of your generator right into your house power, and that it starts up all by itself and it does everything it needs to do and you don't have to do anything, it's nice to have little things, you know, extension cord with multiple outlets on it. I happen to like this thin flat one because you're kind of able to close a window on it. I don't mean cut the extension cord closing the window, but a lot of times with the insulation and newer vinyl windows, you can kind of, you know, close it and this conforms right in, and you don't have too much air leakage. If you don't have that, you know, having one of these multiple outlet situations is always handy. If you have a bad extension cord, and occasionally I'll find it's a good cord, but for some reason somebody messed it up here, or the outlet's messed up, or they yanked off the ground plug, sometimes I'll buy those extension cords and you put a gang box on it. If you put a gang box with a GFI on it, that's better yet. It'll keep you from getting juiced. But do beware also with the GFI, if you have a minor tickle on ground, you put a little voltage on ground, just a little tickle of voltage, it'll click off, which back to your pellet stove or your refrigerator or whatever. So when you go to click it on, the generator will be fighting the compression of the compressor on your refrigerator, or you might lose the light, the fire in your stove. Light. If you're looking for anything like, oh, where did I leave my funnel, and you're kind of walking around, it's easier to kind of, if you have a generalized light like this, which lights up the whole room, rather than this, which brightly lights up a small area. So just from a flashlight point of view, once again, if you're walking, as in trying not to fall down, giving it the old, this is excellent. But if you're looking for stuff, that one seems to be much better. This goes a longer way on batteries than this guy. It's not horrible, but it uses like 8D batteries, and it seems to go through a set on every blackout. If you use Duracells, it'll last longer, assuming they don't decide to leak on you. So that's the kind of stuff I learned when you go through, most of the blackouts here, 8, 12 hours. But when you start going 60 hours, you start thinking about how much gas do I have. So the Ryobi, being an efficient generator, is good about that. Obviously, there's still people in my county that have no power, and today is what? Tuesday. And they might not have power before that storm Quinn hits. So they might not get power until the weekend. So they might go a full 7 days without power. And if you're doing that, it's much better to have an efficient generator. I'd say this thing burns twice as much fuel as the Ryobi at any given load. The Ryobi, you have to stop loading it as I try not to run it, put much more than 1,000 watts on it. It's rated at 2,200. I might go as high as 1,500. This thing is rated at 4,000 with a 5,000 start on it. I typically, even with this guy, though I use it to start the heavy loads, typically this one, I normally don't load it, much over 2,500. It'll do it, but if you want your generator to last your lifetime, you don't load them that heavy. If you want your generator to last a storm or two or a year or two, run them right at the line. Hopefully they hang on, right? And I happened to be at Harbor Freight for something else, and they're completely sold out of generators, and there's no shipments coming before the Mighty Quinn. Not that I need one, but just saying, some people are like, oh, I'll buy one before I need it. Yeah, maybe you will. Or maybe you'll be there one person late. Okay, I hope this helped. If there are any questions, please let me know. I mean, there's other little things I've done over the years. My water tank, instead of being one of those short little guys, is one of those real tall ones. So I get quite a bit of water out of it before I need to charge up the well. Typically, when I do charge the well, I run the water tank pressure as low as possible. That way it's easier to start the well pump. It's easier on the generator. I normally run kind of in a water conservation mode when the power's out. So I'll as the tank is charging, we'll flush everything, we'll fill containers if we need to do that. We'll use as much high water usage as possible as the tank is filling. But once the well clicks off, typically at that point I disconnect the well from the generator. When it cycles off at 45 psi, I typically disconnect the well from the generator. And if you need to take a shower or whatever, you do that conservatively. And you could get a shower out of my tank full of water. Once again, you got to be moving, and you might want to turn it off while you shampoo. But once again, once the tank is completely, the pressure is to the point where the water is just trickling out, I'll put the electricity back to it and fill it back up. It's just easier on the generator not to start the pump up against water head pressure, as they call it. That noise you hear is, you know, the thing dripping right there. So I guess that's about covers it. I mean, obvious things like you should have gasoline if you're going to run a generator. It's kind of tough riding around during the storm looking for gasoline, especially if the power's out. Gas stations need power to pump gas. Even a few other things while the power was out. I went by McDonald's to use their free internet and, you know, bought a coffee. And while I'm in there, the place was stuffed with people using their free internet. But McDonald's only had one outlet for customers' use. So I got to witness a close to a battle over that, you know, flying fists. For using the outlet at McDonald's. So if you go to McDonald's, if you can have your computer charged in advance and, you know, run for an hour, then, well, I'm out of electricity, let me go home. Either that or be first at McDonald's. And it might not be a bad idea to run a little cord, or have a, you know, multi-plug with you, so you could kind of run a little cord to your laptop and plug it in. If you got two spots on it, you might even make a friend. So not another bad thing to own. We already talked about extension cords. I mean, I don't think I'd run something this long through McDonald's, but if you have a shorter version with a multiple end on it, it might not be a bad thing. Okay, that about covers all my winter storm prep advice, everything I've learned after Winter Storm Quinn. You know, each storm, hopefully you learn a little something. After each storm, you realize you probably forgot a bunch of things that you already knew, but you didn't remember to prepare with. So there you go. All right, everyone, please stay safe. Remember, keep your feet down, keep your heads up, get out and enjoy each and every day. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know that you enjoyed it. And if you didn't and you give me a thumbs down, please tell me why. Okay, take care, folks. Bye now.